All right, so now we have our three main principles: zooming in and out, being hypothesis-driven, and thinking about consequences, and it's time to put them all together. For this example, we're going to analyze Airbnb's 2018 actual roadmap for its Superhost users. Now, this roadmap slide that Brian Chesky, the CEO, shared at the company's annual keynote address is from 2018. At the time, Superhosts were critical to the success of the company, since customers trusted them a lot more. So let's specifically look at the items in spring, summer, and fall. Now, we don't have knowledge about Airbnb from the inside, but let's apply our principles to understand how the company may have prioritized these items. Specifically, let's look at tools to test different versions of your listing, Superhost policies for faster resolution, and choice of free photography or travel voucher. Let's begin with our zoom out approach. We can imagine that when product managers were interviewing Superhosts, one of the things that likely came up was, I keep having to spend time resolving issues with Airbnb. Now, as smart PMs, our ears would perk up and we'd say, tell me more about what you're experiencing, aka zooming out. They might talk about receiving distributions, or cancellation minimum fees, or customer disputes. The PMs might then dig into specifics and the business impacts around these areas, but really just discovered that the best solution is to fast-track Superhost issues with default resolutions that are favorable to the hosts. Next, let's apply our consequence analysis to choice of free photography or travel voucher. Now, the host gets a choice here, which means there's different consequences. For example, if more Superhosts choose free photography, there's a cost to Airbnb to provide that service, likely higher than the $100 travel voucher, so they'd have to estimate this cost and see how to plan it. Additionally, if too many Superhosts choose the free photography, it could create a bottleneck with the local photographers, causing some hosts to not receive photos for maybe 6+ months, leading to unhappy hosts leaving Airbnb. Finally, hosts might assume that free photography is worse than what they do themselves, or it's worthless if they already have great photos. So they might feel this is a gimmick and that Airbnb isn't investing in them. Finally, let's apply our hypothesis-driven development to tools to test different versions of your listing. In this case, it is likely to be a really complex feature for Airbnb to build and maintain. Think about all the permutations of what hosts could test: titles, subtitles, descriptions, pricing, multi-night discounts, primary and secondary photos, what features to list, etc. Airbnb is developing this feature because they believe it will increase revenue. So let's think about the conditions that must be true for that to happen. The first is that hosts have to know how to use this feature, or at a minimum, understand how Airbnb might be applying these tests for them. This could be a big educational need they will need to bridge. Second, hosts need to know how their experiments are improving their own business. So we need to get really great at mapping experiment to booking revenue to show to customers the impact that's being had. And finally, we must ensure that the experiments aren't too wild, otherwise hosts could lose money and have decreased ratings. So now let's put this all together. Why do we think these items are prioritized in this order? Well, free photography is likely something that's huge for newer hosts, and adding new hosts is a key to the success of the platform. It's also probably the easiest to implement for the company, and the consequences aren't too serious if they get it wrong. A little bit longer waiting time is unlikely to have hosts leave the platform. Next, Superhost policies is a great one since it likely delivers really great experience for the host, but there's more tech and business work involved here. So when PMs investigated and zoomed in and out, it probably came up as a high pain point. But since it'll take a little longer to build, it has to be delivered later. And then finally, the tools to test versioning is by far the most complex, with the most assumptions that must be engineered for success. For this one, you need an education program, some sort of data analysis dashboard, and a core experimentation service too. There's a lot more effort needed for this one, with higher risks, hence why it was prioritized later in the roadmap. So hopefully this concrete example has helped you better understand how PMs think strategically in the real world. And the key thing here to remember is that there's no perfectly right answer. That's why this all falls under strategy. Sometimes your strategy is right, and sometimes you get it wrong. But by understanding and applying these principles to your approach, you're improving the chances of getting it right.